and welcome back to the 7th part of Halloween Fest. Since you guys seemed to like my first part of the creepypasta video, I decided to do a second part. So today's video is the top 10 creepiest creepypastas part 2. So let's get to it. Number 10. You. There's a special book at your library that's like any book you've ever read before. This book contains your entire life, from the second of your birth up until your demise. This book is very picky and you must wait to open it until midnight when you're in your closet where there is no light or sound. When you're reading the book, once you reach the present, you must decide if you want to continue reading and read your future. If you do decide to read further, you better not scream when you read about the monster sitting in the closet next to you. Number 9. Origen. He was a man devoted to helping the poor and the sickly with his medicine. He risked making enemies of other local merchants by giving away his potions for free to any of those who were in need of a cure. But he knew if the townspeople knew how he made his medicine, he would have been hung long ago. So he always made sure he was careful, up until one night when everything changed. While making a potion for a sickly child, one of his spell books began glowing. When it opened suddenly to a summoning spell, he lost all control and woke up the next day on the ground with a pentacle carved into his floor. Covering it with a rug, he insisted everything would be fine. Later that evening, he invited in a few children who were in need of medicine, assured that the children wouldn't find the hidden pentacle. But as he left the room to grab his potion, he heard the children erupt into a screaming fit. He returned to see the room covered with bloody pentacles. The guards quickly came and he was locked away into a dungeon for what felt like eternity. Each day his heart filled with more hatred for the children and the townspeople. When it was finally time to be executed, a crowd of townspeople showed up to curse his existence. As he laid there dying, his last few minutes were filled with pure hatred for anyone of this world. When he closed his eyes, he saw tentacles emerge from the darkness and a menacing voice asking if he wished to make them suffer. He did. The pain quickly disappeared and he was left with nothing but anger. He vowed to make the children suffer the most. Number 8. The message. The story starts off with the author begging for you to listen to what they have to say. Time travel is real and they are from the future. Actually, they are you from the future. Knowing they'd be executed for contacting their past self, they risked death to send you a warning, so you can prevent something even worse than death. They can't tell you outright what you're supposed to do, but they do leave you a cryptic message in the paragraphs. The first word of every paragraph spells out the cryptic message: don't look behind you. Not gonna lie, when I read this, I looked behind me and I freaked out when I saw a reflection in my TV. The struggle's real. Number 7. Gateway of the Mind. In 1983, a group of scientists theorized that if a person was freed of all their senses, they would be free to perceive the presence of God. An elderly man who claimed he had nothing left to live for was the only subject to volunteer. To rid him of all his senses, the scientists severed all his sensory nerve connections. The next few days, the man spoke aloud about his thoughts. He claimed he began to hear whispering voices. He then claimed he could communicate with the dead relatives of all the scientists and shared information only the dead relatives would know to prove that he wasn't lying. The voices were relentless and even sedation couldn't help the man escape them. He clawed at his face and begged the scientists to kill him when the voices became more hostile. But thinking he was close to discovering God, they refused. He was then strapped to a table after violently biting at his own flesh on his arms. He went silent for 2 weeks. He then turned his head and made eye contact with one of the scientists and whispered, "I have made contact with God and he has abandoned us." His vital signs then suddenly stopped. Number 6. Lessons from the Shadows of Hiroshima. Sometimes the scariest of stories are the most realistic ones. After the warning sirens start, a father and son have a conversation. When the son says he doesn't understand why their city was chosen, the father answers that this was God's will and the way of life. When the son starts protesting that it could have been another city, the father reminds the son that this is a cycle and their city was chosen because there weren't enough resources to sustain everybody anymore. Once the son accepts nothing can be changed, he and his father say their heartfelt goodbyes. They then strap their hollowed stenciled signs to their bodies and prepare themselves for the Great Reduction. In a flash, their bodies evaporate, leaving behind a permanent shadow shadow. We forgive lest not be in vain. Number 5, Candle Cove. The story begins with a discussion thread posting by a user asking if anyone else remembers a local television show called Candle Cove. A couple of users who remember seeing the show began piecing together what they can recall from the few episodes that aired. In the forum, they put together that the show is about a creepy doll named Pirate Piercy, and it took place in Candle Cove. The story takes a very creepy turn when they remember the villain called the Skin Taker, who wore a hat made of children's skin in one particular episode that was plotless and only showed the faces of screaming characters. Wanting to dig a little further, a user asks his mother if she also remembers the show. Surprised he would ask such a thing because the mother recalled whenever he said he was watching Candle Cove, he'd really just sit in front of the TV screen for 30 minutes watching dead air static. And she says Candle Cove was all in his imagination. Number 4, my fear of water. He was always terrified of water, not because he couldn't swim, but because whenever he was underwater and he would open his eyes, a vision of a blonde woman with blue eyes would stare back at him from above the water's surface. He never told his father about this woman, but he did begin asking more questions about his deceased mother. Every time he would try, his father would abruptly end the conversation. Once he finally told his father about the woman, his father only showed a quick glimpse of recognition of the woman's description before quickly ending the conversation. Tired of getting the runaround, he began searching his house for old pictures of his mother. That's when he found an article about a woman hidden in a drawer. The article began by saying the woman was found not guilty of attempted murder of the near drowning of her infant son due to reasons of insanity. Next to the article, there was a picture of a blonde woman with blue eyes. It was his mother. Number 3, the blind man's favor. In Berlin after World War II, money was limited and everyone seemed to be hungry. A woman making her way through a crowded street ran into a blind man and the two began talking. The man asked her to deliver an envelope to an address that was on her way home, so she accepted. When she turned around to ask the man if he needed anything else before she left, she realized the man wasn't disabled and she quickly told police. The police then investigated the address that was on the envelope and they discovered a house of horrors. Inside the home, there was large amounts of human flesh for sale. The letter inside the envelope read, "This is the last one I'm sending you today." Number 2, the bad dream. You're awoken by your daughter in the middle of the night complaining of a bad dream. But when you ask her what the bad dream was about, she refuses, saying, "But when I told you in my dream what my dream was about, the thing wearing mommy's skin sat up." As a parent, you accept nightmares as a part of childhood. But what if the monster she's seeing isn't just in a bad dream? Terrified, just staring at your daughter, something to your left begins moving the covers. Coming in at number 1, Mr. Widemouth. What starts as a man recalling the memories of an imaginary friend quickly turned to something more sinister. After moving into a new home, a boy befriends a small creature with a disproportionately large mouth, fittingly named Mr. Widemouth. At first, Mr. Widemouth would harmlessly stay for a chat, but soon his behavior altered and his hobbies took a darker turn. Mr. Widemouth began encouraging the boy to jump out windows where he claimed an invisible trampoline would catch him, or he would encourage him to start juggling knives. When he declined to play along, Mr. Widemouth would sulk and disappear for a few days, only to come back with a game that he said was more fun, but only appeared to be more dangerous. He ended up moving before ever agreeing to play with Mr. Widemouth. Many years later, he returns to the house after hearing it had burned down to find out where Mr. Widemouth had wanted to take him so badly. Just behind his house, there was a graveyard filled with young children. Thank you guys so much for watching my top 10 creepiest creepypastas part 2. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and share it on any and all social media. If you're not yet a kitty cat and would like to become a kitty cat, who has become a kitty cat? Hit the subscribe button to see more videos. Bye!